In a country like North Korea, where the official media doesn't give us so much information, we are obliged to look further and to look around in order to try and find out what's happening. So you could say that we often find out more from what we don't hear from North Korea. But of course, what we need to do then is know how far to take that and where the truth lies.
Here's how our Global Village voices see the reporting of North Korea.
I think the coverage of North Korea by the Western media is very fair. It's not shrill or over the top. It's actually just looks at the situation very, very carefully and methodically. For example, the nuclear crisis, it analyzes it very well, that North Korea does use nuclear weapons as a possible tool against collapse of their economy, and they use this as a threat to get the West and South Korea to give it help.
There are rumours that Jong Il is no longer with us, and we've heard those sorts of rumours before. Then it really shouldn't come as any surprise. Communist regimes are known for covering up who's dead and who's not. It wasn't that long ago that the Soviet Union had covered up the death of Leonid Brezhnev, but apparently it passed away for years, and all his public appearances were with a dummy operated by a foot pump.
If you have a beef that you'd like to share on the global news media and how they report the world, email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. We have the technology to get you on the air as one of our Global Village voices. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. Political cartoons have a way of making headlines. Those Danish cartoons that caused outrage in parts of the Muslim world a couple of years ago are a good example of that. And now South Africa has a cartoon controversy of its own. The cartoon was published in one of the country's largest papers, the Sunday Times. It showed Jacob Zuma, the leader of the African National Congress, preparing to rape a woman who symbolizes the South African justice system. Zuma, who last month was acquitted on a charge of rape, also faces corruption charges that could force him to drop out of the presidential election. Thousands of Zuma's supporters protested after the cartoon was published, and an ANC youth leader has vowed to, quote, eliminate any force, unquote, that blocks Zuma's path to the presidency. The cartoonist, who goes under the name of Sapiro, said it was that kind of talk, the threat against the justice system, that led him to pen the cartoon. Tens of millions of DVDs of a controversial film about radical Islam are being delivered to the doorsteps of American voters this month inside their newspapers. The film is called Obsession, Radical Islam's War Against the West, and it's the work of an Israeli-Canadian filmmaker, Raphael Shor.
This film, Obsession, is without exaggeration one of the most important films of our time.
The film is being sent inside newspapers in swing states in the run-up to the November election, although the film's makers deny that their intent is to sway voters into the John McCain camp. The newspapers that accepted money to distribute the DVDs include the New York Times, the Miami Herald, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. We know of one paper, the Greensboro News and Record in North Carolina, that turned down the money and refused to participate. The paper said the film was divisive, played on people's fears, and served no educational purpose. Belarus holds parliamentary elections on September 28th, but a new study indicates that the country's publicly funded media are giving opposition candidates short shrift. According to the report by the Belarus Association of Journalists and the media watchdog group Reporters Without Borders, the state-run media back the current government of Alexander Lukashenko and do not allow opposition candidates to get their message across. 3 Belarusian newspapers did not quote a single party apart from the one in power during the period studied. The European Union has repeatedly said it will lift sanctions against the Lukashenko government only if the elections are free and fair, and that includes media coverage. China says the relaxed rules governing foreign journalists introduced for the Beijing Olympics will expire next month. Those rules allowed reporters to interview Chinese citizens without government approval and gave the foreign media more freedom to travel in China. Loosening controls on the media formed an important part of the country's bid to win the 2008 Games, and those rules were put to the test in the run-up to the Games by protests in Tibet and the Sichuan earthquake. The Chinese government is now set to issue a new code of conduct for the media next month, which critics expect will mean a resumption of business as usual for the censors in Beijing. Some people don't take kindly to being edited.
Для нас это особая трагедия, потому что за многие годы совместного существования
Russia's Prime Minister, Vladimir Putin, is reported to be furious that the American news network CNN only ran short excerpts from an exclusive interview he granted the network. Rumors are circulating in Moscow that the Kremlin may curtail some of CNN's activities in Russia as a result of the incident. The Putin interview was billed by the network as rare and unprecedented access to Russia's powerful Prime Minister. But the 30-minute session in which Putin lectured the U.S. on the history of the conflict in Georgia was reduced to a few short sound bites. After the break, the credit crunch and the U.S. newspaper industry. Is it in free fall?